Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily video update for May 13th, 2024. As I go through this update, I want you to keep in mind that hundreds of thousands of lives are dependent on what you do in terms of the continued support from the West for the Israeli assault on the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank. There are hundreds of thousands of people trapped in Gaza without food, water, and medicine while they're under attack from US-supplied weapons that are being used through bombings, missiles, and tank attacks on civilian populations supposedly intended to wipe out Hamas. There are cries coming out from around the world for an end to the fighting, to put an end not only to the fighting, but to the apartheid situation facing the Palestinians due to the occupation. Also, the need for a freeing of the hostages, as well as a two-state solution with security guarantees for both sides, as well as an economic policy which will deliver a better life for people both among the Palestinians and the Israelis. Now, to call for this is not a pro-Hamas call, nor is it anti-Semitic, but it's a moral imperative and it reflects common sense. Common sense would tell you that peace is not a possible outcome from a mass extermination policy bent on revenge. The problem is common sense is not prevailing in the establishment political parties in the United States, nor around Europe as well. In fact, what we see is commitment from the political establishment to support the war policies of the military-industrial financial complex. Now, we saw that Sunday with Blinken talking on the various TV news shows, and what was his message? Well, his message was that we seem to have discovered that Israel was not obeying U.S. law in its use of weapons that were being provided by the United States. However, while we will pause delivery briefly, we're not going to stop delivering weapons because we support Israel's policy overall. Now, this is the kind of foolishness that's seen in most of the world as an excuse for America's support for colonialism. Now, here's the other irony, though. The Republicans, especially the MAGA type, the Make America Great Republicans in the House and Senate, are attacking Biden as weak for the short-term pause on weapon shipments that he announced last week. And this is across the board in the Republican Party. Just a couple of quotes for you. Mitch McConnell, not known for his common sense, but known as a recipient of huge amounts of funds from the Zionist lobby as well as the military-industrial complex, he accused the administration of bending under the heat of domestic political pressure from his party's anti-Israel base and the campus communists who decided to wrap themselves in the flags of Hamas and Hezbollah. Not to be outdone, Marco Rubio, who some people are saying is a possible candidate for vice president with Trump, Rubio, the senator from Florida, said, "I'm sure Hamas is happy." And he said that the pause in weapons makes a ceasefire less likely. Well, he's not actually for a pause, he's not for a ceasefire in any case. And then you have Speaker Mike Johnson, known for his turnaround from his opposition to the Biden $95 billion weapons package as the supplemental aid bill for Ukraine, Gaza, and Taiwan. Johnson turned around and not only supported it, but is denouncing those who opposed it when previously he had opposed it. On the withholding aid, the short-term pause that Biden announced, Johnson said this is an underhanded attempt to withhold aid without facing accountability. It's undermining what Congress intended and has acted to take care of by authorizing the aid to Israel. And he said, if the president truly wanted to defeat Hamas, like he said in the past, he wouldn't be standing in the way of preventing it from happening. So you have these Republicans who not only now are attacking Biden, but they're comparing him unfavorably to one of the heroes of the Republican Party, Ronald Reagan. And they say that the party of Reagan cannot be weak like Biden is. Now, first of all, many of these Republicans who say that have embraced Biden and the so-called deep state military-industrial complex in their spending bills to continue these wars. But they appear to be completely ignorant of the actual policy of Ronald Reagan toward Israel. And I'm going to review a bit of this because we should rub it in the face of these morons who are citing Reagan when they're attacking Biden's pause on Israel, when Reagan on at least 3 occasions did exactly the same thing for exactly the same reason. So open your ears and eyes, morons in the Republican Party, and I should say as well the Democrats who support Biden's policy, and listen to what the actual history tells you before you start shooting off at the mouth. In June 1981, when Reagan was president, Israel used U.S. F-16 warplanes to attack Osirak nuclear plant in Iraq. This was a very aggressive plan by the Israelis. The United States, with full support of Ronald Reagan, voted to condemn Israel at the United Nations for this attack. And as a result of this, they delayed delivery. That is, Ronald Reagan delayed delivery of 4 F-16s to Israel to show his displeasure at what they had done. Now, weeks after this, in July 1981, the Israelis conducted an airstrike on Palestinian neighborhoods in Beirut, killing at least 300 civilians. Reagan was reported to be, by himself in his autobiography, to have been extremely angered by this action by the Israelis. And he called up Israeli Prime Minister Begin and read him the Riot Act. And he said, we're going to hold back delivery of 10 F-16s and 2 F-15 jet fighters because of what you just did. Now, just about a year later, on August 12, 1982, Israel attacked civilians again in Lebanon. Reagan called Prime Minister Begin and described those attacks as a, quote, Holocaust, unquote. He ordered the shelling stopped. Begin protested, but Reagan said, you must stop this or there'll be consequences. Begin complied with Reagan's request and stopped the shelling. But what did Reagan do? He then halted the shipment of cluster-type artillery shells and then delayed the delivery of 75 F-16 warplanes until March 1983, so a delay of more than 6 months. And then when March 83 came around, he said he would not release the jets until the Israeli forces were withdrawn from Lebanon. And what happened? The Israeli forces were withdrawn. Now, in doing this, Reagan was following the footsteps of another Republican president, the World War II war hero Dwight Eisenhower, who during the Suez Crisis in 1956 demanded that the Israelis pull back out of Sinai, where their troops were marching against the Egyptians. He threatened sanctions and aid cutoff. The Israelis hesitated before they did that, but their 2 allies in the attack, the British and the French, were told by Eisenhower if they didn't get out immediately that there would be economic consequences, and the British and the French did pull out immediately. So here are 2 examples of Republicans who are not considered weaklings or pawns of the military-industrial complex. Eisenhower, in fact, was one who coined that term. And what did they do? They turned against that military-industrial complex as it was using Israel for the policy goals of the British Empire, which were now the policy goals of the Anglo-American Empire. So here's another point. The same Republicans who wrongly and foolishly are attacking Biden as no Reagan, and there are good reasons to attack Biden, namely that he's continuing to support these wars at all. But these are the same Republicans who allied with Biden to make sure the $95 billion supplemental war package was passed. And then they've joined with him in denouncing student protesters, students who are protesting the Israeli genocidal policies and demanding a ceasefire and an agreement. They're denouncing these protesters as anti-Semitic and violent, both Republicans and Democrats. Now, why are they attacking them? Well, because they oppose the student calls to end the Israeli genocide and occupation, but also they're worried about the calls for transparency from the students of the use of college and university endowment funds going to the war machine. Because the reality is that the university, as well as think tanks, are now fully integrated, along with Silicon Valley, the tech sector, into the military-industrial complex, to the extent that Ray McGovern has coined a new term for the military-industrial complex, calling it the military-industrial, congressional, intelligence, media, academic, think tank complex, what he calls Mickey Mat. And funds are going not only to these military-industrial complex corporations, but they're going to losing wars with no benefit for the American taxpayer. This idiocy must end. And I'm calling on you to join us today. Use the links in the description section below to become an active participant in bringing common sense back into the American and European political scene. So thanks for joining me today. I'll have a lot more on this tomorrow and the rest of the week.